She changed clothes on his security feed by accident. The billionaire's response shocked all. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to the main character. The screen flickered once in the quiet control room. Just once. Ethan Cole stood alone, a paper cup of coffee cooling in his hand, the soft hum of servers filling the space. Midnight shifts were usually predictable. Cameras, corridors, elevators, the quiet pulse of a building that never fully slept. Ethan owned this place, all 30 floors of it. But tonight, he was not here as a billionaire. He was here as a man checking a system after a minor software update. Dressed in a plain jacket, his name absent from every door. The monitor refreshed. For a brief moment, one camera showed a small studio apartment on the east side of the building. A unit leased month to month. Low rent, no upgrades. The kind of place people stayed when they had no better option. Ethan froze. Someone was there. A young woman, alone, clearly unaware of the small black lens mounted high near the ceiling. The warning sign by the door had been half peeled, the letters faded. She moved quickly, rushed, distracted by exhaustion rather than carelessness. This was not performance, this was not intention, this was life, happening in the wrong place at the wrong second. Ethan's breath caught. He could have kept watching. The system would not stop him. He could have looked away and pretended nothing appeared on his screen. He could have done nothing at all. Instead, his hand moved. The feed went dark. One click, then another. He shut down the camera, severed the live view, and pulled the access logs onto the screen. His fingers moved fast, precise, practiced. He deleted the recording before it could be archived, before it could exist anywhere except his memory. Then he locked the entire unit from surveillance until further notice. The room felt colder after that. Ethan leaned back in his chair, heart pounding harder than any boardroom negotiation had ever made it beat. Power was familiar to him. Control was routine. But this was different. This was not about profit or risk. This was about who he chose to be when no one else was watching. He picked up his phone and made a call. "Disable interior cameras on residential floors with temporary leases," he said quietly. "Effective immediately. Replace all signage. Make it impossible to miss." There was a pause on the other end. All of them? All of them. He ended the call and sat there for a long moment, staring at his own reflection in the dark glass of the monitors. He did not know her name. He did not know her story, and she would never know what almost happened, or what he had chosen not to do. Across the building, the woman finished changing and sank onto the edge of her bed, rubbing her temples. Long shift, low pay. Another night in a place that barely felt like home. She had no idea that somewhere above her, a man with more money than she would see in a lifetime, had just rewritten the rules of his own building because of her. And that was exactly how Ethan intended it to stay. Because the test of character, he believed, was not how you acted when people were watching. It was what you did when you had the power to take something and chose instead to protect it. What Ethan did not know yet was that this silent decision, made in the glow of a security screen at midnight, was about to pull him out from the shadows of his own life and place him directly in hers. She did not know his name yet. She did not know what had happened upstairs. All she knew was that her life had narrowed to a series of small, exhausting choices, and none of them felt safe. Her name was Lena Morales. At 6:30 the next morning, Lena stood at the bathroom sink of her studio apartment, staring at her reflection under a flickering light. The mirror was cracked at one corner, held together with clear tape. She brushed her hair slowly, carefully, as if moving too fast might break something else in her life that had not already cracked. The apartment was barely 400 square feet. One window, one heater that worked when it wanted to. Rent paid month to month because no landlord wanted to sign a long lease with someone who changed jobs as often as she had. But it was what she could afford, and for now, it was shelter. Lena worked nights, cleaning offices, emptying trash cans full of other people's lunches and coffee cups, wiping fingerprints off glass walls she would never sit behind. The pay was hourly, the hours unpredictable, and the benefits non-existent. When she finished at 2 in the morning, the buses ran slow, and sometimes she walked the last mile home with her keys threaded between her fingers, just in case. She had moved into this building 3 months earlier, after her last roommate left without notice. No warning, no goodbye, just a text and an empty room. Since then, Lena had learned to live quietly. Do not complain. Do not draw attention. Pay rent on time and hope nothing breaks. That night, she had come home soaked from a sudden storm, shoulders aching, uniform clinging to her skin. She had not even noticed the small black lens near the ceiling. The sign by the door had been half gone since the day she moved in. She assumed it was old, useless, like so many things in the building. She never imagined anyone was watching. Now, standing in the morning light, Lena pulled on a clean shirt and checked her phone. 3 missed calls from an unknown number, probably spam, or a collection agency again. She muted it and slipped the phone into her pocket. Down the hall, an elevator dinged. Voices echoed briefly, then faded. Other people with other lives. She locked her door and headed out, walking fast, eyes down, the way she always did. At the ground floor, she stopped short. A paper notice had been taped neatly to the lobby wall overnight. Attention residents, interior surveillance on residential floors has been disabled. Updated privacy signage will be installed immediately. We apologize for any inconvenience. Lena read it twice, then a third time. Her stomach tightened, not with relief, but with confusion. No one had asked the tenants anything. No meeting, no warning. Things did not change this quickly, unless something had gone wrong. She glanced up the stairwell, then back at the notice. A strange chill ran through her, the kind that comes when you feel close to something you cannot see. She shook it off. Changes in buildings like this usually meant one thing: new management, new rules, new risks. Outside, the city was already awake. Traffic, horns, a delivery truck idling at the curb. Lena pulled her jacket tighter and walked toward the bus stop, calculating her day in her head. 8 hours tonight, maybe an extra shift this weekend. Maybe she could finally replace the broken lock on her window. What she did not know was that the decision made hours earlier in a quiet control room had already altered the direction of her life. And what she did not know was that the man who had erased her from a screen had not forgotten her for a single second since. This was the moment where her vulnerability and his silence began to move toward each other, and neither of them was ready for what would happen when their paths finally crossed. Ethan Cole did not sleep that night. By sunrise, he was already dressed and back inside the building, moving through the service entrance instead of the main doors. No suit, no driver, just a dark jacket, plain shoes, and an access badge clipped low enough that no one looked twice. To most people, he was just another building manager. That was how he preferred it. He stopped by the front desk and nodded to the overnight attendant, a middle-aged man who barely looked up from his screen. Ethan signed the log with a shortened name and took the stairs instead of the elevator. He wanted to see the building the way the residents did. Every cracked step, every flickering light, every place where things were just a little too broken to feel safe. On the 3rd floor, a woman struggled with a grocery bag that had split at the bottom. Oranges rolled across the hallway. Before she could kneel, Ethan bent down and gathered them, placing each one carefully back into the bag. "Thank you," she said, surprised. "No problem," he replied. "Maintenance." She smiled, already turning away. That was how invisible he was. As he walked, Ethan noticed details he had ignored for years. A loose handrail, a door that did not close all the way, a smoke detector hanging by its wire. He made notes on his phone, not as a billionaire approving budgets, but as a man seeing consequences. Every floor told a story, and none of them matched the glossy reports he received in board meetings. When he reached Lena Morales' floor, he slowed. He did not know why he recognized the unit number immediately. He just did. Her door was closed. Quiet. No sound inside. He did not stop. He did not look longer than necessary. But something tightened in his chest anyway. This was the first time he had been this close to her without a screen between them, and she had no idea. Later that afternoon, Ethan stood in the laundry room pretending to check a dryer that did not work. The room smelled of detergent and heat. A radio played softly from someone's phone. Lena stepped in carrying a basket that looked heavier than it should have been. She hesitated when she saw him, then offered a polite nod. The kind people give when they do not want trouble. These machines eat quarters, she said lightly, more tired than annoyed. Ethan smiled. They do that. I am trying to fix it. She studied him for a second. No suit, no arrogance, no sharp edges, just another man with grease on his hands and an apologetic look. That would be nice, she said. Some of us plan our weeks around clean clothes. Her honesty caught him off guard. He watched as she loaded the washer, movements efficient, practiced, someone used to making the most of small spaces. When the machine jammed, she sighed and knelt, trying to retrieve a stuck coin. Ethan crouched beside her and twisted the panel open with a simple tool. "Here," he said, handing her the quarter. "Thanks," she replied. Then, after a pause, "You did not have to." "I know," he said, "but I wanted to." She looked at him again, really looked this time, and something in her expression softened, just a little. They stood in silence as the washer started. "What is your name?" she asked. "Ethan," he answered, without his last name. "Lena," she said. "Nice to meet you." The words landed heavier than they should have. They parted without ceremony. No promises, no flirtation. Just two people sharing a small moment in a room that smelled like soap and heat. But as Ethan walked away, he realized something had shifted. Lena Morales had treated him with the same quiet respect she showed everyone else. Not because she thought he mattered, but because she believed people did. And that, more than anything he had seen on a screen, told him exactly who she was. The test had begun. By the end of the week, Ethan Cole had made a decision he had never made before. He stopped observing from a distance. Instead of sending emails or delegating through layers of management, he began showing up, quietly, personally, not as the owner, but as the man people thought he was. Maintenance, facilities, someone whose name did not carry weight. On Friday evening, Lena came home later than usual. Her shift had run long, and the bus broke down 3 blocks from her stop. By the time she reached the building, her feet ached, and her shoulders burned from carrying her cleaning supplies all night. The lobby lights were dimmer than usual. One bulb flickered above the mailboxes. She sighed and reached for her keys. "Careful," a voice said gently. She looked up to see Ethan standing on a ladder, replacing the bulb. He was holding it steady, focused, sleeves rolled up, hands marked with dust and grime. "I did not mean to scare you," he added. "I am almost done." "It is fine," Lena said. "I just was not expecting anyone down here this late." He climbed down slowly and screwed the cover back into place. The light steadied, warm and clear. "There," he said, "should be better now." "Thank you," she replied. Then, almost without thinking, "You work late." "So do you," he said. She smiled faintly at that. They stood there for a moment, the quiet stretching between them. Not awkward, just tired. "I saw the notice about the cameras," Lena said carefully. "That was unexpected." Ethan kept his expression neutral. "Yeah, new policy. That does not usually happen without a reason," she said. "No," he agreed. "It does not." She waited, as if expecting him to explain more. When he did not, she nodded. Some questions were not worth pushing. "Well," she said, shifting her bag higher on her shoulder, "I appreciate it, whatever the reason." He watched her walk toward the stairs, then turned back to his work. That night, Ethan sat at a small desk in the temporary office he used when he stayed in the building. He reviewed maintenance requests that had gone unanswered for months. Broken locks, faulty heaters, mold reports dismissed as low priority. He approved them all, not because it was good business, because it was right. The next evening, Lena returned to find a repair crew in her hallway. The heater outside her unit had been replaced. The loose railing was gone. A new sign had been mounted clearly near her door, bold and impossible to miss. She paused, unsettled. Inside her apartment, the air felt warmer, safer. She checked the lock on her window. It clicked smoothly for the first time since she moved in. Something was changing. At the laundry room 2 days later, Lena struggled to lift her basket onto a folding table. Ethan was already there, tightening a bolt on one of the machines. "Careful," he said, stepping forward. "That thing looks heavier than it should." She laughed softly. "It is. Life does that." He helped her set it down. Then he noticed her hand, red and raw along the knuckles. "That looks painful," he said. "It is nothing," she replied automatically. He did not push. He simply handed her a small packet from his pocket. Bandages, clean, new. "In case you want them," he said. She hesitated, then took them. "Thank you." As she wrapped her hand, she glanced at him. "You are very attentive for someone who says they just fix machines." He shrugged. "Machines break. People too." The words surprised both of them. They finished their tasks side by side in silence. When the washer jammed again, Ethan fixed it without charge, without logging it, without asking her anything in return. Later that night, Lena sat on her bed, the bandage still fresh on her hand, replaying the small moments. The light, the repairs, the quiet kindness. She did not know who Ethan really was, but she knew one thing. If he was pretending to be something smaller than he was, it was not to gain anything from her. And somewhere upstairs, Ethan Cole stared out at the city from a window few residents ever saw, realizing that every choice he made to stay hidden was making it harder to walk away. The test was no longer just about her. It was about whether he could keep lying to himself. By the following week, the rhythm between them had become familiar. Not close, not personal, just steady. Ethan began timing his visits to the building around the hours Lena usually returned home. He told himself it was coincidence. He told himself it was oversight. But every time he heard the stairwell door open near the end of her shift, he was already nearby, fixing something that did not urgently need fixing. That evening, rain hammered the city without warning. Lena pushed through the lobby doors, soaked, hair clinging to her face, shoes leaving wet prints on the tile. She stopped short when she saw Ethan struggling to move a cart of box supplies away from a leak forming near the ceiling. "Do you need help?" she asked, already stepping forward. "It is heavy," he said honestly. She set down her bag without hesitation and grabbed the side of the cart. Together, they rolled it clear just as water splashed onto the floor where it had been. "Thank you," he said, breathing hard. "You would have done the same," she replied. He did not answer, because he knew the truth was more complicated than that. They stood there, rain drumming above them, water creeping across the tile. Lena reached into her bag and pulled out a small towel, one she used for work. "Here," she said, handing it to him. "Your hands are bleeding." He looked down, a scrape along his knuckle, fresh from the metal edge of the cart. "It is nothing," he said. She gave him a look, not judgmental, not dramatic, just firm. Nothing turns into something when you ignore it. She wrapped the towel gently around his hand, movements careful, practiced. Someone who had learned to take care of things because no one else would. Ethan felt something tighten in his chest. Not desire, not attraction. Respect. Later that night, as maintenance finished addressing the leak, Ethan watched Lena wait by the stairs instead of taking the elevator. "It gets stuck," she explained when she noticed him looking. "And I do not like enclosed spaces." "I will make sure it gets fixed," he said. She smiled, tired but sincere. "You always say that, and then it actually happens." He almost told her the truth then. Almost. Instead, he said, "I like my job." "Yeah?" she asked. "Why?" He paused. "Because sometimes fixing small things matters more than people think." She nodded slowly, as if that made perfect sense. The next day, Lena found a small envelope taped to her door. Inside was a bus pass, fully loaded for the month. No note, no name, just the card. Her first instinct was suspicion. Her second was panic. Her third was gratitude she did not want to feel. She took the envelope downstairs and found Ethan near the front desk. "Did you do this?" she asked quietly, holding it out. He did not pretend. He did not lie. "Yes," he said. "I cannot accept this," she replied immediately. "You already did," he said gently. "You help everyone without asking if they deserve it. Let me do the same, just once." She searched his face, trying to understand his angle. There was no smile of victory, no expectation behind his eyes, only patience. "Thank you," she said finally, "but this does not mean you get to save me." "I know," he replied. "I am not trying to." That night, Lena used the bus pass anyway. For the first time in months, she did not have to walk home in the dark. She sat by the window and watched the city slide past, feeling something she had almost forgotten: relief. Upstairs, Ethan reviewed the security logs again. No cameras active near her unit, no exceptions, no shortcuts. He realized then that the test had changed shape. It was no longer about whether Lena was kind. She had proven that without knowing she was being tested. Now the question was whether he could continue standing beside her as a stranger, knowing that every day he did so made the truth heavier to carry. Because when kindness is met with kindness, hiding starts to feel less like protection and more like betrayal. By the time the month turned, something unspoken had settled between them. Not romance, not yet. Something quieter, something heavier. Lena noticed it first in the smallest ways. The elevator was fixed and no longer stalled between floors. The stairwell light stayed on through the night. The front door lock no longer jammed when the temperature dropped. None of it was announced. None of it asked for gratitude. It simply worked. One evening, Lena came home earlier than usual. Her supervisor had sent her home after a client complained that she looked exhausted, as if exhaustion were a choice. She sat on the steps outside the building, phone pressed to her ear, listening. "I know, Mom," she said softly. "I will figure it out." There was a pause. She swallowed. "No, I am not asking for money. I just needed to hear your voice." Her shoulders sagged as she ended the call. "Rough day?" She looked up to see Ethan standing a few steps away, holding a clipboard. He had not meant to overhear. He had stopped when he realized she was on the phone. She considered brushing him off. Instead, she shrugged. "Life," she said. "It does not wait for you to catch up." He sat down on the step below her, leaving space between them. He did not ask questions. He did not offer solutions. That alone felt like a kindness. After a moment, she spoke again. "My mother thinks I should move back home. Says this city is chewing me up." "And what do you think?" he asked. "I think leaving feels like failing," she replied, "and staying feels like drowning." Ethan looked straight ahead. Sometimes both things can be true. She smiled at that. A real smile, the kind that reached her eyes. Later that week, a notice went up in the lobby about a temporary closure of the laundry room. Repairs. One night only. Lena stared at the sign after a double shift, calculating her options. The nearest laundromat was almost 2 miles away. "Come with me," Ethan said when he found her there. She frowned. "Where?" "There is a service laundry in the basement. For staff," he said. "It is cleaner, and it works." She hesitated. "I do not want special treatment." "It is not special," he replied. "It is practical." She followed him. The basement was warm and quiet. The machines hummed steadily. He helped her load the washer, then stepped back, giving her privacy without making a show of it. While they waited, she noticed his hands again. The scars, old ones, new ones. "You act like you have been fixing things your whole life," she said. He laughed softly. "I have been fixing the wrong things for a long time." The words surprised him as much as they surprised her. The washer finished. He carried her basket without comment. "Why do you do all this?" she asked finally. "You do not owe me anything." He met her eyes. This time, he did not look away. "Because someone once helped me when I did not deserve it," he said. "And it changed how I see people." She accepted that answer, not because it explained everything, but because it felt honest. That night, Ethan stood alone in his office, reviewing a file he had avoided opening for weeks. His own name stared back at him, attached to titles and assets and responsibilities he had kept hidden. He realized then that the longer he stayed silent, the more fragile the ground beneath them became. Lena trusted him as he was, as Ethan, not as a billionaire, not as a man with power. And that trust, freely given, was the most dangerous test of all. Because once you accept someone's kindness without truth, you risk turning protection into deception. And Ethan knew the moment of reckoning was no longer distant. It was coming. The reveal did not happen the way Ethan imagined. It did not come from him choosing the right words. It came from the truth arriving on its own. On a Wednesday afternoon, the building buzzed with unfamiliar energy. Black cars lined the curb outside. Men in tailored suits moved through the lobby with purpose, speaking into headsets, scanning faces. Lena noticed immediately. She had just returned from an early shift and froze near the mailboxes, her stomach tightening. This was not maintenance. This was not routine. A woman at the front desk whispered to another resident, "The owner is here. The actual owner." Lena frowned. The owner never came. That was what everyone said. Whoever owned the building lived somewhere far away, invisible, untouchable. Then the lobby doors opened again. Ethan walked in, but not the Ethan she knew. He wore a dark suit now, perfectly tailored. His posture was different, straighter, colder. People stepped aside instinctively. A man beside him murmured, "Mr. Cole," with a tone that carried weight. Lena felt the air leave her lungs. She looked from his face to the people surrounding him, to the security detail that fell into step behind him like shadows. Ethan's eyes met hers. For a fraction of a second, the mask slipped. He stopped. The lobby went quiet. "Is everything ready for the meeting?" one of the executives asked. Ethan did not answer right away. He took one step toward Lena. "Give us a moment," he said. They hesitated, then nodded and backed away. Lena stood frozen, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. "You are the owner," she said, not asking. "Yes," he replied. The word landed like a blow. Her face flushed, then drained of color. 1,000 moments replayed in her mind at once. The repairs, the bus pass, the quiet help, the way he always seemed to be there. "And the cameras," she said softly. "You owned those too?" "Yes." Her hands curled into fists. "So you saw me," she said, "that night." Ethan swallowed. "I saw the feed activate for a moment." "And then?" she demanded. "And then I shut it down," he said. "I deleted it. I disabled the system." She laughed once, sharp and hollow. "After you looked." "I did not watch," he said firmly. "I turned away as soon as I understood what was happening." Silence stretched between them, heavy and exposed. "You let me think you were someone else," she said. "You let me talk to you, trust you." "I never meant to deceive you," he said. "I was trying to protect you." "That was not your decision to make," she replied, her voice shaking now. "You had power, and you kept it hidden." He nodded. "You are right." People in the lobby pretended not to listen, but every word hung in the air. "I need to know something," Lena said finally. "If I had been cruel to you, if I had ignored you, would you have still helped me?" Ethan did not hesitate. "Yes," he said, "because the choice was never about you passing a test. It was about me." She stared at him, searching for something she could hold on to. "You should have told me," she said. "I know." She turned away. "I cannot do this right now," she added quietly. "Everything I thought was real feels tilted." Ethan did not follow her. He let her go. That evening, Lena sat alone in her apartment, staring at the new privacy sign by her door. She remembered his hands fixing things, his silence, his patience. And for the first time, she wondered whether the truth that hurt the most was not that he had power, but that he had used it to protect her when no one else ever had. Downstairs, Ethan sat through the meeting he barely heard, his eyes fixed on the glass walls reflecting a man he no longer recognized. The reveal was over. Now came the reckoning. Ethan did not try to fix things with words. He knew better now. The morning after the reveal, Lena left her apartment before sunrise. She called in sick for the first time in 2 years and rode the bus to the end of the line, just to be somewhere unfamiliar. She needed distance, not from the building, but from the feeling that every kindness she had trusted might have been controlled from the start. When she returned that evening, the lobby looked different, not quieter, not grander, clearer. A large notice board stood where the old mail slots had been. Printed policies were pinned in plain language. Privacy rules, camera limitations, resident rights. At the bottom, a name was signed in full. Ethan Cole. No title, no logo, just his name. In her mailbox, Lena found a single envelope. Inside was not money, not a gift, not an apology letter written by lawyers. It was documentation, timestamps, access logs, system records, proof. She read slowly, sitting on the edge of her bed. The camera near her unit had been disabled that same night. The recording had been erased before storage. A building-wide update had followed within hours. No exceptions, no hidden access. Her hands trembled, not with relief, but with the weight of understanding. He had not just protected her, he had changed the rules so no one else would ever be in her position again. The next day, a residents' meeting was held in the community room. Attendance was optional, but the room filled anyway. People stood along the walls, curious, cautious. Ethan stood at the front, alone. "I owe you all clarity," he said, "and accountability." He did not hide behind corporate language. He did not shift blame. He explained the camera systems, the failures, his decision to disable interior surveillance permanently. He announced a resident oversight committee, funded and independent. He opened the floor to questions and stayed until every voice was heard. Lena watched from the back. This was not the man she had met in the laundry room, but it was not a stranger either. After the meeting ended, people drifted out slowly. Some nodded at Ethan, some avoided his eyes. Accountability did not earn instant forgiveness. Lena waited until the room was empty. Then she stepped forward. "You did not have to show all of this," she said quietly. "Yes," he replied, "I did." She held up the folder. "You could have just said sorry. That would have been easier," he said, "but it would not have been honest." They stood there, the space between them no longer safe, but no longer false. "I am not asking you to trust me," Ethan said. "I lost the right to that. I just wanted you to know the truth, all of it." Lena exhaled slowly. "I hated not knowing if my life was mine," she said. "I hated wondering if I was ever really choosing anything." "I know," he replied. She looked at him then, really looked. "And I hated realizing that the first person who ever truly protected me did it without asking for credit." Her voice broke on the last word. Ethan did not reach for her. He did not step closer. He waited. "I do not forgive you yet," Lena said, "but I see you." "That is more than I deserve," he replied. She nodded once. "Maybe," she said, "but it is where we start." For the first time since the reveal, something inside Ethan loosened. Not victory, not relief, redemption. Not because he was forgiven, but because he had finally chosen truth over control, even when it cost him the most important connection he had ever formed. And Lena, walking back to her apartment that night, realized something just as heavy. Trust was not rebuilt by grand gestures. It was rebuilt by changed systems, shared power, and the courage to stand exposed. The story was not over, but the ground beneath it was finally real. The months that followed were quieter, not easier, just steadier. The building settled into a new rhythm. Repairs were logged and completed. Privacy rules were enforced without exception. Residents began leaving notes on the board downstairs. Not complaints, but suggestions, ideas, small acts of ownership. Lena noticed the change most on the nights she came home tired and did not feel watched. She stayed, not because Ethan asked her to, because for the first time, the choice felt like it belonged to her. They did not rush back into what they had been. Weeks passed before they spoke again outside the building. It happened by accident, the way real things often do. A small neighborhood cafe, a short line, the smell of coffee and rain. Ethan stood behind her, hands in his pockets. "Lena," he said gently. She turned. "Ethan." No titles, no distance, just names. They sat at separate tables at first. Then one cup turned into two. Conversation came slowly, carefully, about work, about books, about the city and how it chewed people up, and sometimes, unexpectedly, gave something back. He never asked for forgiveness. She never offered it lightly. One evening, after a long silence, Lena said, "You know what mattered most to me?" He waited. "That you changed the system even if I never came back," she said. "That means it was not about me. It was about who you chose to be." He nodded. "I spent years believing leadership meant control. I was wrong." She looked at him. "Leadership is what you do when you think no one is watching." The words settled between them. Over time, trust returned. Not as a leap, as a series of steps. Shared meals, honest conversations, boundaries respected without resentment. Ethan funded a resident program that hired people from the building for paid maintenance and safety roles. Lena did not join it. She chose something else, a new job with better hours, a small step forward that felt earned. On a warm evening in early summer, they stood on the roof during a community gathering. Nothing formal. String lights, folding chairs, People laughing. Lena leaned against the railing. Ethan stood beside her, not touching. "I used to think kindness was weakness," he said quietly. "I do not anymore." She smiled. "It never was." He reached into his pocket and pulled out something small. Not a ring, a folded card. Inside was a photograph. The lobby, the notice board, her handwritten suggestion pinned among many others. "Privacy is not a luxury, it is dignity." She swallowed. "I kept that," he said. "It reminds me why I cannot go back to the way things were." Lena closed the card and handed it back. "You do not have to carry it alone." That was when he took her hand. Not to claim, not to prove, to ask. She squeezed his fingers once. Yes. Later that night, as the lights dimmed and neighbors drifted home, Lena stood at her window, looking out at a city that still scared her sometimes. But not the way it used to. Ethan stood behind her, close enough to feel, far enough to respect. They had not fallen in love because of money, or rescue, or power. They had chosen each other because when faced with the chance to take something, one of them chose instead to protect it, and the other chose to stay. In the end, the story was not about a camera, or a secret, or a billionaire. It was about this simple truth. Real love begins where control ends.